So we've got Scott back after having him on just the other day to talk about my favorite subject, Optimus. It turns out that Scott also has a few thoughts because he loves the SpaceX business and loves the Starlink thing and is looking very forward to being a shareholder in the future, whatever it's going to be called. I guess maybe Starlink IPO that's coming along. But Scott, there was news the other day, and you wanted to report on that news.
Yes, it was an Elon tweet, and I don't know if we want to bring it up or just do it from memory. Starlink is now, I guess, cash flow neutral. So it's no longer losing money.
No longer losing cash flow, which is different than losing.
Yeah.
You can be profitable and still cash flow negative. So I think they've been profitable for a while. But he had said all along that they would not do an IPO on the Starlink division until the company was cash flow positive. That was the main thing. Really, I don't remember any other things that he said that would hinder him from doing.
Yeah, he said it could be kind of lumpy, so you got to be careful. It's like just because you have one quarter that's really good, you got to remember there's going to be a lot of others. Now, if you just read the first line of the tweet, it was a little bit vague because he said, at Starlink at SpaceX at Starlink is now like neutral or basically breaking even. And if it just left it at that, you're not quite sure what he's talking about. And then the next sentence, he talked about the number of Starlink satellites that are out there and all the connectivity and all that's going. So it was very clear that that's what he was talking about. Because when I think of SpaceX in general, I think of it as having a couple of different groups in there. First is like SpaceX, the launch provider.
Right.
And I assume at this point, the launch provider is not losing money on the launch business for traditional launches, meaning non-Starlink launches.
Right.
So all those contracts that are out there, I assume they're not losing money, because if they are, they should be charging a little bit more because they are cheaper than everyone else. So the assumption is that they know what they're doing and that they're probably making a small profit on that, or at least break even.
Probably even a substantial profit on that, because the amount of money that they're putting into Starship.
Yeah, that's the other one. So you get the launch provider, which is probably profitable, and then it might appear to be really profitable because they're going to be doing at least 100 launches a year. I mean, they're at 90 already, and we still got 2 months to go. So, and they're doing 3 launches a week. So it's like end of November, they've already hit 100 without a problem. But the majority of those, again, are Starlink. So it's basically, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's money going in there. So like, well, look, we got all this money. Yeah, but it's coming out from this other side, and they have to be justifying it. So I'm assuming what it means is like all the costs for Starlink. So you get the manufacturer of all the satellites,
right,
which is quite a cost there. And then there's actually operating the constellation itself and making dishy and all these other things out there. The assumption is that all that right now is able to be covered. They're not losing money on the hardware. They're getting enough in the subscriptions, and they're able to afford to actually pay for the launches that they're doing.
Right.
So
at a reasonable internal price. Yes.
Right. For whatever that transfer price is. So that's going to be reasonable. And then you get the third part, and that's Starship. Now, a lot of people said, oh, what this means is that they're no longer going to require investors or like another capital raise. Like, no. It's like that part there, that's what the investors are doing, is they're funding that part, hoping the other parts at least remain break even and then eventually do well enough that they're able to become self-funded. So I'm pretty sure that depending upon how things go with that you're going to have those costs. Now, if you think about it, a lot of the key has been reusability.
Sure.
So that's been a key, but we got to be careful there on the reusability, because every one of those launches they're doing, I don't know how many they're going to have doing for Starlink this year, but it's going to be a high number. It's going to be like 80s or 90s or something like that. Because I mean, what was there? Like, there was like Psyche and a few other missions here and there. It's like maybe 1 in 4 is a non-Starlink launch. It seems like all they're doing is going up. So they've got a manufacturer with 3 launches a week. And these are, I think Vandenberg might be switching over, because they were getting down. They used to be doing about 60 a launch, and then they were getting the bigger satellites. So they had to kind of get them down. So they're doing about 40, but still they're just like, oh, that's like 120 satellites per week. So that means your line, they're producing 120 satellites a week.
Yes.
And then, okay, they're reusing the fairing. That's good. But they're not reusing the second stage.
Right.
And they're launching 3 times a week. They're throwing away 3 second stages a week. Okay. That means they're able to manufacture 3 second stages a week. Think about that.
Yeah.
Just think about that. So it's rather remarkable that they have that sort of manufacturing prowess that they can do that. And that's one of that is the thread that ties together all of Elon's companies, is that in the end, it's not whether you design, a killer product. It's like whether you can actually manufacture it and what they're looking at. So we know the bot is going to end up being sort of the same way. It's like, it's all about being able to manufacture that thing at scale as well. So we don't really have to worry about them being able to figure out that piece of the puzzle. Will they be able to build the bot and be able to build it cheaply? They will, because Elon's got that idiot index, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, what his normal idiot index is, whether it's a factor of 10 or 100 or something like that. But the idea is that if you look at the raw material costs for your material, right, and then you look at the finished product costs, and if it's like a big multiple in there, then you're really stupid about how you're doing the manufacturing. You're adding way too much cost. And we know Optimus, that what's going to be in there when you melt it down is only going to be worth about $200 in material. And so, okay, 200. So is it going to be a scale factor of 1,000? That's like a big idiot index. So, 200,000 to be able to build an Optimus? No. It's
all right. So if we can make the satellites, we can make the Falcon 9, Falcon 9s. Yeah.
Falcon 9s. Yeah.
Falcon 9s. We're probably doing that at a profit. We're selling those to the other division, to Starlink, at some internal price. And then that's breaking even. So we're able to do all of that. The amount of money that we're transferring internally has to be enough to justify the rest of what the company is doing. And then there's this idea that we'll spin it off and we will make this IPO.
Make an IPO, right?
And all of the stockholders in Tesla have understood from the beginning that somehow, maybe, he never said absolutely, but that somehow maybe Tesla stockholders would get some kind of a first look at that stock.
Right. Maybe first dibs, or maybe they're, think about, usually when you have an IPO, you have the investment bankers set the price and they get it at what is the IPO. And then you'll have like a friends and family kind of thing, that people who are insiders are also able to get it at the pre-IPO price. So you could decide to do that.
Right.
And then, when it goes out, then it's something else. So maybe it will be one of those things like, we're going to set this thing up. And if you're a Tesla shareholder, you're entitled, maybe to buy up to a certain number at a particular, and I don't know whether that would be unlimited or not, or how they would do that. I've seen these before when my brother's company IPO'd, it had like one of those friends and family things, which you could do. And I think, I probably could have bought as many shares as I wanted to, but, my bank account was only so big at the time. Yeah. So you just kind of, go in and come up with a number, and you're hoping it goes up. And then, sure enough, usually in these IPOs, no one can get the IPO price. I mean, everyone says, oh, wouldn't that be great to get the IPO price? Yeah. And you never do. And you see that usually that day it rockets like 2 or 3 times and sometimes a lot more. So there'd be a huge advantage to being able to get that very early on. And I would think that would be one way of being able to do it. But remember that they would spin off Starlink, but I still don't think they will make SpaceX public. No. I think it's that's like the public company Elon doesn't want, because once it goes in there, they'll say, this whole Mars thing, that's not profitable. Stop it. We don't want you doing that. And so he's like, no. I'll go ahead and do that. And then the thing is like, will they be able to make sort of enough profit from that to be able to help fuel that? I'm not sure what the relationship is at that point, whether they're really completely separate, and then whether from that IPO,
well, first of all,
where's that money? How does it go to funding Mars? That's what I haven't quite figured out. Is when you spin that thing off.
SpaceX will maintain probably 50%, 45%, something like that of the shares of the new company.
Shares. Right.
And so they'll
And so
only
they would get a cut of the dividends if there are dividends.
And they will raise billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on that IPO because everybody and their third cousin is going to want that thing. And then if the stock goes up, obviously, then it provides more of a stock value for the SpaceX Corporation as well, as the value of the asset goes up. And then over time, as that company throws off money, which Brian Wong has suggested could potentially be the most cash flow rich company of all of Elon's companies.
Could
because
be.
Of the potential on the cell phone side, as well as what we're seeing in terms of ships at sea and airliners, not to mention military, as we've already seen all the military applications. So the potential of this thing as a monthly subscription for all of these use cases, again, Brian thinks it could be actually the biggest cash out.
Yeah. Now this is again, I'm coming to you via Starlink, so we're able to sort of verify that that's going on. I just got a new router, which the original router, let's say, was okay, but this new one seems to be a lot better. So I'm able to connect my equipment to it a lot better. I'm noticing that this Zoom call seems to be a lot crisper than it has been normally. I know that they have been making lots of improvements in the software side. So the early versions of Starlink, you had problems if it was raining or snowing, especially in heavy rains. And that has not really been a problem anymore. So you still will get little dropouts, but they will be very, very short, and then we'll figure out how to redo it. And part of it, I think, is the software, and the other is that the Constellation has grown so much. So I think I've had this not quite 2 years yet, and a little over 18 months that have been set up with Starlink. And when I started out, I think they might have had about a little over 2,000 satellites in there. And now I'm just looking at it, and they have like 4,250 active. Yeah. Okay. They've launched over 5,000. About 800 of them have already burnt up, and there's still another 100 or so that are inactive that are, up there probably waiting to come on down. And then I looked at the Starlink tracker that I have, and I remember, the last time you did it, it has got an AR mode that you can go up and see the satellites are up there, and you'll see a couple. And a few weeks ago, I did it with someone who said, "Oh, there's like usually only see like 3 at a time," and we're looking up there, it's like, no, we're actually seeing a lot more. And then I looked at my tracker, and it's able to show all the satellites that I could potentially be connecting to. And it knows that it's like only to the north, because usually it just points to the north and not there. And I was thinking, it's like, holy cow, at any one moment, there's somewhere between 10 and 12 Starlink satellites that I could potentially be connecting to.
Wow.
And a year ago, it was half that number.
Yeah.
And so there's so many of them out there right now that, it's like when one of them is going down the horizon, it's still got a couple more to go for. And so, it knows where they are. And if something happens, like when you get the rain and you drop out, it's knowing where the other one is and is trying to go ahead and find that one and get it really quickly to make sure you get back in it. Because sometimes, the weirdest thing is that there were a few times I was getting knocked out when I knew there was like an impending rainstorm that was coming, but it wasn't raining yet. I still was like, oh, I'm still getting some sunshine. But there was like this real big mass of a thunderhead coming in my direction. And it was like a little bit to the north. And I have a feeling, it's pointing to a satellite that's kind of like a little bit low on the horizon. It's like going right through that thundercloud. And maybe if you just went for the one that was like right up above my head, it would be better. And that's sort of what would happen, is like that's where the density is. That's where you get too much water.
Wow.
And so they're figuring out the tracking really well now and where they're going to be. And again, just that number. Now, it seems like almost in about a year they've doubled. Now that's a hard to double. For them to be able to double every year is something else, because they're already at like 100 launches. And if you're talking about turning that around to being, 200 launches next year. So that's why they want to get Starship, because Starship will allow them to start putting up things. They want to go from 4,000 to 42,000.
Right. But
that's not
only will Starship be able to do more per throw, they're talking about Starship launching every couple of hours.
Yeah, but the thing is, where's it going to be launching every couple hours? Because it's not clear they're going to get that clearance down at Boca, whether they're going to have to do it somewhere else. Now, one of the things that they've done here is that normally they've just been launching this Starlink out of Slick 40. And now I see they're starting to use 39A a little bit more, but it gets tied up for Falcon Heavy and for Crew.
Right.
And there's a little bit of concern of them launching out of something that's for now. They've actually retrofitted 40 that they could do crew launches out of Slick 40 as well. So they have two options now. And I don't think it's because they necessarily have such a cadence of crew launches that they need to have two of them for that. But I think part of it is to give NASA kind of the confidence of like, let us just do more launches out of 39A so we can keep this cadence going and don't worry about it. If something screws up there, we still got, the other one over there that we can use for the crewed launches. But it is impressive. And October the 13th was very interesting. And you know why it was interesting?
No, I don't.
It was the second time this year. And I was like, I ended up missing it because I was actually up in Atlanta at that time, but it was rather interesting what happened on the 13th because back in August, they had what I think was the first time they managed to get two launches from the same launch site in the same day.
Yes.
And so Crew 7 went up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and then they had a Starlink launch at 9:30 the same evening. So they were both kind of, night launches, but they were in the same calendar day and they were 18 hours apart. And I went out to the Cape to see both of them. So I'd like, I got both of them, one from Slick 40 and the other one, well, first 39A and then Slick 40. But October the 13th was even a bigger treat because that was when the Falcon Heavy went up.
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah.
And so that went out of 39A and that went out at like 10 a.m. or 10:30 in the morning. And anyone who was there stuck around. At 7 o'clock that night, they had the next launch. So they had like two daytime launches on the same day, and one of them was a Falcon Heavy. So it was a very lucky day.
Yeah,
for anyone that was there because that's a rarity. And they said that I think that's the closest that they've had two launches from the Cape since 1966.
Wow! Back
in the days of Gemini and Agena.
Wow.
And so you're going to start seeing more of that. Now there have been cases where I remember one time driving all the way there because they were going to have two launches within 45 minutes of one another. And of course, one of them got scrubbed. So it's like every one of them was like, oh, wow, this is the time they're going to do it. Like one of them would scrub for one reason or another, but they're getting it and they're getting the turnover. So I think they, at least like Slick 40, they're able to turn over in 4 days.
So one last question,
which is amazing.
One last question with regard to this whole idea of the IPO. I think they're going to have to limit, like I'm sure it'll be some percentage of the stock that you own in Tesla. So it might be 10%
could be
stock or how, but they're going to have to limit it in some regard because otherwise it could impact the price, the price of the Tesla stock.
Yeah, everyone's selling it. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily you could swap Tesla shares for that. I think I would think it's
a direct swap.
Yeah, you're entitled to buy a certain number, and of course, what that might mean is that some people then say, "Oh, I'm going to sell my Tesla shares," and then they might say, "Well, wait a minute, you sell the Tesla shares, you actually can't buy that number anymore." Because you've got less shares. So it's based on the number of shares you got the day of the IPO. So you better have the money in the bank already. So I don't know. They'll probably come up with something.
Something
there of what that would be. So you'd be limited to something. I don't know. And again, I don't even know what the legality of it is like. It's like, has that ever been done before? Has this even been tested? Or are they saying, no, you can't really do that? They're completely different companies. They're completely unrelated. And like investment bankers won't like that because no, we're the ones that are on the inside here.
It will be so interesting. Well, I'm sure they've already been working on some of that stuff if they intend to give the Tesla shareholders some kind of an advantage. Well, Scott, I think we're going to wrap it up there. It is always so fascinating to have a conversation with you. Love to hear about this whole thing with Starlink and with the IPO and everything else. And I guess, until the next time that we get some exciting news with regard to the robot, with regard to my buddy Optimus, because I am the Optimus optimist. And so that's one of my favorites.
So here's like the one thing that may be. What do you think the chances are that Optimus will escort the Cybertruck out to the stage for the delivery?
That'd be good. Or drive it out.
I don't think drive it. Optimus can't drive. Okay, so we know that. But Optimus is able to line dance in front of a Cybertruck, and we've already seen that.
That's right. That's right.
But no one has actually seen Optimus publicly since AI Day 2. Yeah. We've only seen videos.
Yeah.
So this would be an opportunity for Optimus to be shown actually in public. Yeah. And who knows? I mean,
I suspect you're right. I don't
know. My fingers are crossed. My fingers are crossed that something like that might happen.
I'm suspecting there will be a public exhibition of some kind. All right, Scott, thank you so much for being on board. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you. Is somebody going to join Patreon? All right, I'm going to make a deal. This is going to be, I've done this once before. It worked a little bit. Actually got a lot of people joining Patreon the last 2 weeks. But the last 2 days, not a single soul. So let's get you up on Patreon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 1 free audiobook. You can have 2 free if you want. Or you can have 1 free audiobook and the Cybertruck bottle opener. How's that? 1 and 1. Okay. If you join at the $10 level, not at the $5 level. If you join at the $5 level, you just get the 1 book. Now, if you're completely new to the channel, this is a bottle opener. It is a refrigerator magnet. It is 3 millimeter think, stainless steel, really, really tough. Comes in a very cool magnetic box that makes it a great gift item. So, it's got all kinds of people now buying them as gifts as a result of the fact that I have so many people that want to buy them as gifts, and they're putting in these larger orders. I do have it all down. I think I put it all down below. I'll have to double check and make sure that it's up to date. They're normally $25 a piece. You get 2 for $45. You get 3 for $60. Okay. You get 100 for $210, and you get 200 for $400. Gets you all the way down to $20 a piece. If you are out of the country, I need you to add another $20 to that for freight, whichever one of those ones you pick. And then if you are, and then please let me know camo or regular. And of course you can mix and match if you buy quantities, however you want to set that up. So is there anything else I have left for you tonight? I think I've said it all. I have enjoyed speaking with you yet again.
Click the link below to get your paperback, Kindle, or audiobook now.